Hello and welcome to 4-Color Alchemy. I'm Led Sharp and this is the first part of my video essay on X-Force. At last, I've been threatening to do this for quite a long time and we're up to volume God knows what of X-Force now. It's a comic I still adore and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to categorise everything I want to do with my video channel and I'm going to do this first. It's the one thing that I've really wanted to do and now I've actually finally got around to doing it. I'm overjoyed with it. It might be 2 parts, it might be 3 parts, depending on where the second part goes. But this is just an introduction to X-Force and why it came about. I really hope you enjoy it. Back in the early 90s, industry mentality did 3 things. 1, they decided that the artist was more important than the writer. Ironic because 2, they also decided that The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen were the jelly mould every comic needed pouring into. And 3, the dynamism of manga became the visual language that made artists popular, and that many popular Western artists mangled in what could charitably be called innovation. Superman died, Batman broke his back, Spider-Man was cloned, and while the X-Men were somewhat revolutionary under Claremont, they were starting to tread water, and thanks to artists like Todd McFarlane launching Spider-Man into the air like a broken elastic band, fans were ravenous for more anatomy-defying nonsense. So let's have a little history. Back in 1982, Chris Claremont launched the New Mutants, an attempt to bring the X-Men back to school and expand the X-Men line. It was good, if not great, right up till 1989 when one of the greatest comic artists of the 20th century was unfortunately on the toilet and lost out to Rob Liefeld, who landed the role of artist on the book with issue 86. I say artist because it describes his position, not his talent, which was to comics what Kid Rock is to music. Only Louise Simonson's writing made it bearable, though her writing was increasingly filtered through the Marvel method. That's where the plot was written, the artist drew the whole story, and then the writer filled in the dialogue. Where Liefeld's increasingly unhinged and derivative ideas were starting to royally piss her off. Simonson did not have an easy job trying to craft stories for Liefeld's gibbon-fingered scribbles, but unfortunately those chicken scratches spoke to every 14-year-old who had aspirations of drawing comics, mainly because Liefeld's level of talent mirrored theirs. As said, the increasing popularity of what later became known as the Image style made artists like McFarlane, Lee, Silvestri and Larson, a group in which Liefeld was included, the rock stars of the industry, and the suits didn't care about the writing. Despite comics like Watchmen, The Dark Knight Returns and Mouse being not just fan favourites but critically acclaimed outside the fandom, specifically for their written content. Citing an inability to work with Liefeld and the editor's constant interference giving Liefeld more control, Simonson left the book. In what must have been a moment of clarity akin to the burning bush, Liefeld realised he couldn't write as well as he drew. Yeah. So he called upon Fabian Nietzsche, I apologise if I butchered that, and the last 3 issues of New Mutants, that's 98, 99 and 100, introduced characters that would slowly drive the title into what it would eventually become. In 1991, Tom DeFalco went to the X-Books line editor Bob Harris and told him to expand the X-Men line, and against Harris's better judgment, they started to shuffle and reinvent the X-Books. X-Men just relaunched, and New Mutants under Liefeld and Nietzsche became X-Force, which sold 5 million copies, becoming the second biggest selling comic of all time. How? While the success of X-Force can be attributed to the reader's cravings for steroid-driven men with guns and women able to reveal T and A at the same time, there was another reason they sold like rubber gloves at a proctologist convention. Marvel at the time were working with Skybox International, a trading card company, at the start of the speculator boom. They released 5, count them, 5 polybagged versions of X-Force issue 1, each with a slightly different coloured cover and a unique trading card. So speculators and fanboys flocked to the shops to get their sticky mitts on at least 5 copies of the comic, to either get all the cards or keep safely sealed away so that in years to come they can buy a mansion after selling it on eBay. Though there was a problem or two with that, not least of which eBay hadn't been invented yet. But no one twigged that selling that many comics meant that there were enough in circulation that everybody who wanted one had one. So when a suitable marketplace was invented, they would sell like condoms to eunuchs at the annual union meeting and buffet. I've picked up a couple for 50p each myself. Why? Well, my better half commented on Clayton Crane's bloody amazing artwork from the 2008 relaunch of X-Force for Volume 3. And as a lapsed fan of the X-Men and looking for something to balance the influx of indie books I was reading, a bit of well-crafted sex and violence filled the gap. When I found about 50 issues of Volume 1 for pence each, I had to sate my inner completist. Early on though, you could feel corners being cut with laziness, and the rot setting in as Liefeld illustrated the series up to issue 9 and stopped plotting it after issue 11, before going to inflict himself on Image with the big boys, allowing Greg Capullo and Fabian Nietzsche to ride the roller coaster of madness that almost straight away started to become at least partially coherent, and lose a little of that so bad it's brilliant magic. Pressure from men in suits that wanted to churn out more lucrative toys and trading cards forced creative teams across the company to squeeze in ever more weird and terrible characters, crossovers and storylines that all flew past unresolved as the next plastic delight was designed and produced to dangle in front of the kiddies' ravenous little faces. Volume 1 of X-Force itself careened around a decade being a family, a military unit, a covert op squad, but always the team mutants went to if they needed to shoot or stab things rather than seek therapy. It's been an official and an independent team. Its roster has covered almost every mutant with a body count, and then some. X-Force has been Cable's private army and a rogue team. New Mutants returned alongside them as X-Force became very much its own beast. But while I was late to the party during the 90s, I was watching the Grim grit their teeth and getting their backs snapped by roided up luchadors. Reading those issues, I observed an evolution of comics from the early 90s, with a current perspective. From those first few issues of Liefeld's scribblings to the surrealism of Peter Milligan and Mike Aldred's closing run, relaunched as X-Statix for 26 issues, X-Force was an example of a comic so utterly of its time, born from fanboy memories of Watchmen and Miller but without the understanding of what those comics were trying to achieve. Dressed in the trappings of every pop culture reference woven from the movies of Stallone and Schwarzenegger. The early artwork was god awful, but you found yourself drawn to why it was popular at the time. The energy was so contagious. So there you have it. Part 1 over and done with. God knows when part 2 will come out, but that will be something I'll be working on after another 2 videos for 4-colour celluloid and 4-colour reactions. I have ideas for those, so it's not like it's going to take forever. Now I also have a TikTok. My Facebook account has gone skew with the one I used for 4-colour world, because I can't like anything, I can't post anything, but it just says to prevent you from misusing it. I have no idea why. I use it as a backup account in case I get thrown into Facebook jail for calling out bigots and bumheads on my regular account, and I was using it quite happily, and then all of a sudden, no, can't use it anymore. I'm not banned, I'm not suspended, it just a little message pops up saying I can't use it. Anyway, beside the point. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, I am on Twitter, but I don't really use it for 4-colour world stuff, but you can still follow me if you want to. Take care, have fun reading comics.